Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Yes, pretty much, because one wrinkly boy reached the limit of his own ability and decided to make it everyone else's problem simply for the love of the game. Kenjaku's 1000-year plan to elevate humanity into the higher planes included everything from creating new forms of life to orchestrating a national battle royale, and we're going to break down all of it in great detail. Hello comrade, my name is Mahis. Come, get yourself a beverage and sit down with me. We got Homo sapiens to advance. The beauty of this whole endeavor is that it didn't really go as Kenny expected it to go. At multiple points in time, he faced issues outright blocking his progress, so he had to meticulously brainstorm ways of dealing with them, only for a random event or two to solve a good chunk of the puzzle. He was quick to take advantage of them, but to fully understand why this one, for example, was so significant, we need to go way back. However, this is where we start having troubles, as the further into the past we look, the less sense certain things make. Take the infamous 10 million curses released in Shibuya. How in the name of Buckethead did he gather that many? According to math, it's forming 27-ish packs with curse spirits a day, every day for a millennia, and the problem is not even that he gulped 10 million of them in a year since Gero's death or released them through means other than curse spirit manipulation. It's the implication that over a millennia there were that many curses to begin with, while the Japanese population was a fraction of what it is now, which absolutely destroys the secret society plotline. Unless, of course, Kenjaku is single-handedly responsible for bringing the number of cursed spirits and Jujutsu users to a minimum, so that it all fades away into folk legends like yokai and such. Still doesn't make much sense, because that would suggest a sorcerer to curse ratio of 1 to 10,000 if he made a pact with most of them, or that he had to accelerate and go up to hundreds of curses a day to account for spawn rates. Anyway, logistics and his backstory aside, Kenjaku was a mad scientist. Don't let that exterior fool you, he's done some fucked up shit in his pursuit of sorcery, and just like Bergenware scholars, discovered that there is something higher than humanity, just not exactly what nor how to access it. That's why his main goal is to optimize cursed energy, the common denominator between regular people, sorcerers and cursed spirits, to the point where mankind will evolve into something more than that. One of his earlier attempts to do so was trying to produce a fusion of cursed spirits and humans by creating cursed womb death paintings, natural born, half human, half curses. Kenny didn't necessarily plan for this, a random encounter occurred and he was quick to capitalize on it. A woman who was capable of giving birth to human spirit hybrids has come to his temple seeking refuge or maybe some kind of solution, only to be Orochimaru'd into a dungeon for further study. Under the guise of Noritoshi Kamo, he how can I say it for guidelines, did some jujutsu gardening by employing cursed spirits to plow soil and plant seeds in hopes of creating GMO crops that will grow stronger than all the others. The result was disappointing. None of the death paintings could hold a candle to his power, which made Kenjaku realize that when he tried creating something, the outcome was capped by his own potential. That's where the idea of forced evolution came from. Instead of engineering the result he wanted, he decided to create conditions that will result, the result he wanted. The first step, naturally, was to look more into Tengen, as she was all about preventing herself from evolving into the next state of being. Not sure how he came up with the whole she'll be able to merge with normal people, not just star plasma vessels shtick, but let's say this was an educated guess based on his centuries of research, them both being old AF likely sharing a connection of some kind, or maybe even seeing it happen already, as how else do sorcerers know to perform this ritual every 500 years? Regardless, the objective was clear: do not let Tengen redeem and make her assimilate with all the people of Japan. Easier said than done, and this is another point where we have some inconsistencies / uncertainties that we need to wrap our own brains around. If this was the point where he set his sights on Human Instrumentality Project, how come he has already failed to stop the merger? Tengen clearly says, and yet on the day of assimilation, both the star plasma and six eyes still appeared, which must have happened around year 1500 as per 5 century cycle, meaning that Kenjaku was thinking of evolving humanity through Tengen before he failed as Noritoshi Kamo. Moreover, him telling Sukuna it's beginning once again the world of Heian, the Golden Age of Jujutsu, implies that he was there 3000 years ago and already planning to start something big in an unspecified future, as this whole turning people into cursed objects and incarnating them for culling games seems very similar to what happened to the King of Curses, on the account that Jujutsu people don't seem to know how // became 20 cursed fingers. That would make this plan over 1000 years in the making at the very least, and sparks a question: what came first, the chicken or the egg? At this time, Kenshan didn't quite realize that he is limited by his own ability. It was a very recent development, just over a century ago, so how would he go from "I want to optimize cursed energy" to "I will merge the whole country with some immortal sorcerer, which I don't even know will work"? There must have been steps between these points, like realizing he can't do it himself, as nobody would go and instantly plan for a nigh impossible task. I think the timeline is a bit messed up, and the Kamo shenanigans should have happened somewhere between the Golden Age of Jujutsu and the previous Star Plasma assimilation. That way, Kenjaku would have had the time to evaluate his options and begin developing a blueprint for the pandemonium we know as the Shibuya incident. But my here's, what about collecting sorcerers and cursed spirits to participate in these games? By your logic, this started over 1000 years ago if he turned Sukuna into cursed objects. That's a good point, and to answer it, I'll bring up Kenny's main character attribute. He is an opportunist. Just like Heian-sama, he doesn't necessarily plan everything 100%. He has a general idea which he works towards, and once something advantageous happens, he seizes it immediately to further his progress. Turning sorcerers into cursed objects was a natural part of his research, and Kenjaku must have realized that this is a good investment. Not only does he get to practice his craft, but he also gets a card he can play later whenever the stars align. The timeline was as follows. He comes up with this grand idea of evolution through Jujutsu, collects Pokemons as part of his research, tries to optimize it by himself and fails, leading him to choose the Tengen path. But it is way easier said than done, because other than stopping the assimilation, he needed to find a controlled way to merge her with the population of Japan. I suspect he might have considered taking over her body, although I don't have any proof of that. So the most likely answer is that he didn't have a solution either. You got to remember, for all intents and purposes, Brain-chan is immortal and is in no rush considering that Tengen resets herself reliably. The first stage of stopping this assimilation is so difficult that he probably didn't even bother thinking any further, or at least not in great detail. For starters, he needed to kill Star Plasma vessels before they could merge. Tricky, because the Six Eyes users were always accompanying them due to some cosmic fate bullshit circle whatever you want connection, and even when he did succeed, another vessel just showed up anyway, discouraging him from any further attempts. I think it was stupid to abandon the idea, cause he kind of followed the same dumb logic as Admiral Zhao. The Avatar will reincarnate, so it's useless to kill him. What? If he killed Aang, Ozai would have had at least a decade to do whatever he wanted. Same thing in JJK. Since a person can't just become a Star Plasma vessel, they have to be born. It makes zero sense to stop going after them, as all you need is to kill a couple to mess up this super precise assimilation cycle. The potential answer is that there are several vessels alive at the time, but something is not right here either, since Riko wasn't replaced by anybody, meaning that there can't be that many of them, and regardless of Six Eyes, if you kill enough vessels, you will stop Tengen's reset. Whatever. Say that after several candidates were killed, Jujutsu Society protected them with enough powerhouses for Kenjaku to give up the brute force strategy and focus on removing Six Eyes from the equation. That is way more doable, because this technique should always have someone wielding it, which makes it exploitable, as if the sorcerer is sealed, they will be inactive but alive, thus fulfilling the rule of only one Six Eyes user at a time. On a side note, this is probably why Kenjaku couldn't snatch the ability, because as soon as he kills the holder, the power will simply jump to another one, whether Gojo clan member or a distant relative, leaving the body an empty husk. He obviously couldn't sit still trying to scheme a perfect solution for his sealing enterprise, so like any true scientist, he was running research projects in parallel with his main goal. Yuji was likely one of those side gigs to see if something cool happens when he's an actual parent, or to make a vessel to control Sukuna, as the power of his fingers grew over time and could theoretically have spontaneously incarnated. No rush though, he's chilling, studying cursed energy and getting clapped now so his son can clap later. You know what? I see why Jin totally ignored Itadori Extra Senior's warning that Kei-chan will be his death. Dude was alive for 1,000 years and must know exactly what makes a brother weak. He's chilling, making a failsafe against Sukuna, so imagine the surprise when he learned that the curseless daddy killed the star plasma vessel, that there is a young curse spirit manipulation user, and that through the power of Plot Almighty, no new assimilation candidates can spawn, which he was also aware of somehow.
Oh my god! Okay, it's happening! Everybody stay calm!
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
That's probably what he felt like, as for the first time ever, there is a sense of urgency. Not sure when he found the prison realm exactly, but I bet it was between the hidden inventory and the parade of 100 demons, as that would explain why he was missing and didn't go for Geto's body earlier. You can make an argument that Kenjaku would have lost to one of the most OP techniques, but I think he would have come up with something if he really wanted to. In any case, he now has an evolving Tengen and a way to force the assimilation by taking control of them with Suguru's power, so the only hurdle left to overcome is Gojo with his six eyes. That is still one hell of a task, for which he teamed up with the Disaster Curses, manipulating them to do his bidding by falsely aligning his goals with Mahito and the gangs. Speaking of whom, thanks to the law of equivalent exchange, a millennia of failures and bad luck made a complete U-turn, so on top of all this, there is now a cursed spirit who can overhaul people to his heart's content. Bingo! The stars have aligned better than he could have ever hoped for, and there is only one thing standing in his way: the strongest sorcerer of the modern era. In comparison to his previous exploits, luring someone into a trap is not that big of an issue, so he quickly devises a plan that will level up Mahito, seal Satoru, and start the culling games simultaneously. I make it sound simple, but there are a lot of little things that intertwine together which we need to understand. First is the activation of Prison Realm. A bit of an assball if you ask me, cause in order for it to work, the target must stay within its 4-meter radius for a minute's worth of time within their mind, meaning that if you catch a nasty flashback, you're toast. That's why Kenjaku had special grades to stress Gojo as much as possible, so that he in Geto's body can trigger memories spanning years, meeting the sealing requirements. The second is Mahito's idol transfiguration and its extraction. The way Geto's cursed spirit manipulation works is that when he takes control of a cursed spirit, it locks their power level, making any kind of Pokemon evolution impossible. That's why Mahito needed to grind XP for a bit to max out his technique before Kenjaku pockets him to apply it on such a large scale. Think of Shigaraki and his awakening. You'd much rather have a power that can chain react than his basic decay. The other aspect of CSM is the ultimate move Uzumaki. Its main purpose is to recycle unwanted cursed spirits into one big attack, but it will also do something interesting when a special grade is involved. The user will gain the ability of that spirit for one single use. This makes sense because it incentivizes keeping these curses around, as the ability is called Cursed Spirit Manipulation, not stealing cursed spirits techniques. Kenjaku was likely better off using Mahito, as he could have empowered his body or helped with his experiments, yet in order to interact with the cursed objects he wanted to incarnate and the sorcerers he wanted to awaken, he needed his own energy to be poured into Tengen's barrier so that it can react with everything he prepared in advance. Besides the culling game barriers, there are two types of people. 1. Those who have cursed energy software lacking hardware to use it like Junpei, and 2. Those who weren't suitable vessels for their cursed objects being optimized like Yuji. That is the third component, everybody he made pacts with over the last millennia. If people's part is understandable, the cursed spirits have a caveat. Before inhabiting Geto's body, he had to form a two-way agreement with them, likely to be stored somewhere and released once the time has come, in exchange for whatever curse is asked. Yet after acquiring Cursed Spirit Manipulation, he can now order these curses to do whatever he wants directly, thus nullifying all the previous arrangements. That's what he meant by "those vows became null when I obtained this body." It's only the ones made with curses, not ancient sorcerers. I guess this is how Kenchan initially planned to release so many curses at once, and given that some vows, especially with the stronger curses, might have cost them a kind of price, it wasn't ideal, which is why Geto became quite handy. The fourth part is the Tengen's barrier, and in simple terms, he used it as a nationwide transmutation circle to remotely apply idle transfiguration to people and activate his own barriers prepared for the calling games. Don't ask me how does that fall under a single use of a technique extracted by Uzumaki. I don't know. Probably it's just like electricity. He had set up all the appliances to do whatever he needed them to do and used the barrier as a massive power grid to supply them with energy. The next major stage is the calling games, and its purpose is nothing complicated: to occupy sorcerers while he's setting everything up and to gather enough cursed energy to merge all of Japan's population with Tengen. Although the way to do it is rather elaborate. Remember, cursed energy comes from negative emotions, so creating an apocalyptic event by itself will result in a lot of it being released, let alone having people battle it out PUBG style on top of it. This is where barriers come in. They serve a bunch of purposes, and collecting cursed energy must be one of them, alongside transporting people to dedicated game areas, connecting all of them, and even preparing the general populace for assimilation. This preparation or warm-up is important and draws inspiration from Buddhism. The other side or shore is Higan, a state of enlightenment. Kenjaku wants to ascend the human race to what he considers enlightenment, so he needs them to cross to the other side, even symbolically first, exposing themselves to a small version of being changed to increase the chances of proper assimilation going smoothly. In addition, it also turns people practically into batteries, fueling the whole process. The sorcerers don't have it any easier though, because they're being put through a ritual known as Kodoku, which was a mystical practice of trapping a bunch of poisonous insects in a jar, hoping they will kill each other and create some super poison. Exactly like Dimple, only for sorcerers and not spirits. They're supposed to be fighting each other to refine their techniques and generate cursed energy to, again, increase the odds of the human evolution project succeeding. The last stage is to retrieve Tengen and to control them with cursed spirit manipulation. Where did he learn that she will eventually become something like a cursed spirit and not a positive spirit, cause there is positive energy too if you forget? Nobody knows, but that's when Kenjaku will assimilate everyone and see what happens. That's it! He doesn't care whether he will succeed or not, nor if one bad apple corrupts the rest. He really does it for the love of the game, and I respect him for that. All in all, this is a decent plan that is not your traditional evil anime masterminds
Plan around the plan that they are planning around our plan.
and mostly relies on taking advantage of opportune moments occurring throughout the story. Timings aside, the biggest issue I have is how the hell does Kenny know all this extracurricular stuff? For example, the whole bond between Tengen, Star Plasma and Six Eyes being broken by Toji killing one of them. Sure, I can accept that because the cursed energy operating system doesn't account for outside intervention by one-of-a-kind curseless human, so it basically got stun-locked into an endless loop of checking for why the vessel suddenly disappeared, which prevents a new one from spawning. Yet how did he learn about that? Or what was Kenjaku's plan if neither Geto nor Mahito showed up while Tengen went into evolution mode? Oh, and don't even get me started on why Four Eyes here did not sound an alarm, because we passed the point of no return. For God knows how long she had Jujutsu sorcerers bring her bodies to reset with, and now she's like, well, might as well do what I was trying to avoid for the last 1000 years and not tell anyone about it. Iwazai, Mahia's big braining into the microphone. Have a great whatever time of the day you have. Until next time, cheers.